do is I'm just kind of tell a couple of stories, my personal experience with education and also how we ended up leading to the birth of SkillShare, and also share some stories from our community of some awesome teachers and students that have evolved out of it as well. This is one of my favorite quotes. So one of our engineers sent this to us internally, and I felt like it totally made a lot of sense. Education is the only true global religion because it's something that everyone believes in. We find that a lot with the work that we're doing is that everybody has an education, everyone has an opinion about education. Everyone's been through it from kindergarten to the time they graduate high school, college, or grad school. And everyone has an opinion of why it's broken or what's awesome about it. And with our company, what we decided to do is really dissect that and figure out how we can make it adaptable to the internet. So the story I want to tell, it really starts in 2000 to 2004. So I got into the University of Virginia. What was really weird about my experience at UVA was I got taught in this format. So I went to a class, I sat in a room, got lectured. Didn't really want to learn the topics that somebody chose for me. Then I would memorize them as much as I could, and then spat them out on a test and would leave the room. And 4 years later, I graduated, still more confused than I ever was. So not too long after that, I ended up getting to grad school at this school in Richmond, Virginia called the VCU Brand Center. And it was a school around advertising, and this is an image from our lobby. So it was a really creative school. But what was really interesting is that throughout the 2 years at that school, it was literally in this format. There was very hardly any lecturing. We had no textbooks. We had no final exams. I never took an exam at that school. I never bought a textbook. And they taught us in this really different format that put us at the center and allowed us to learn by collaborating with other people and by just working on projects and taking action. So that really started, I think that moment when I graduated from school really got me to think about the difference between education and learning. And I felt like for the first time, I got to work on things that I chose to work on. I felt like they actually designed an experience around me as a student. So when we started thinking about, how could you bring that type of education online, the analogy we always use internally is kind of like the Wild Wild West. So that, like any town in the Wild Wild West, you have to build all the infrastructure. And I think what's happening right now is that you really have to pioneer a way for people to learn online. And I think that's what a lot of companies are trying to do, and I think that's the next phase of what's going to happen on the internet. And the way to educate people on the internet and online is you can't do it in the same format that's been done for the past 200 to 300 years. A question we ask always internally is like, how do you actually educate 1 billion people? If you really internalize that, and how do you educate them around all the real-world creative skills that are needed today in our society? What I'd like to do next is share a couple stories of what has evolved out of SkillShare, which is a company that we started. So what we did was we really modeled the experience around putting the student at the center. So what that means is, the entire experience is completely decentralized. It's very project-based or very action-oriented or around doing and collaborating. A lot of the students collaborate with other students, so the basic premise that only one person can teach is completely thrown out the window. What we're starting to see is that students learn in different ways, and they move at a different pace. And what we're starting to see is students that move at a faster pace pull up students that are a little further behind and teach them what they just learned. And through that model, that very distributed model on the internet, it really allows you to start educating people at scale. What we're also starting to see is teachers are moving from lecturing to becoming more of a facilitator, more of a designer or curator. We're starting to see a more open and flexible model. Not too long ago, we launched our version of online classes, and this is Elliot. So Elliot was really famous because he taught the first sneakerology class at CMU. And what Elliot did is he went out and he got really creative of how he was going to teach. So he actually didn't really lecture that much. He interviewed this guy named Frank the Butcher, which is a very heralded guy in the street culture, and basically just interviewed him about his inspiration behind making sneakers, share those with his students. He also held a lot of online office hours, so as students are uploading their projects and showing their designs, he would give them real-time feedback. He would also double that with some short lectures he would give them. A lot of the students started collaborating online, so they would ask each other questions, they would give feedback on the designs that were being uploaded, and some of the students were meeting around the world in real life and sharing their work with each other and learning. What was really cool to see is that students from all around the world started uploading all these great sketches and images of all these things they were creating. These are 4 of my favorite ones. There's probably hundreds that were happening throughout the class. But when we first put it up, we literally thought no one would actually complete the project. But I think what we notice is when you put the student at the center and you give them all the tools and resources in the network and the community, great things can start happening. So to close, because I have about a minute left, this is a question that I ask myself all the time. If I had to design an education for my kids, their kids, their kids, kids, what would that look like? And I think that's what we're striving to do, and I hopefully a lot of you in the audience could try this new format as well. And I think that's how you end up educating 1 billion people on the internet. So thank you.